Isolder reached under his fighter's control panel and pulled out a survival kit. Above him, on the demolished X-Wing Luke had piloted, the parachute bolted onto R2's ejection seat opened, and the droid jerked upward. Isolder cracked the transparasteel bubble of his fighter, let the wind catch it and fling it open, then leapt from the ship, soaring in freefall. But when it came time to send up his parachute, he flipped the release, and nothing happened. He yanked the emergency cord and flailed his arms, shouting. Miraculously, some type of repulsor lift field hit him, slowed him so that he dropped softly as a feather. When Isolder landed, he saw that his ship had also settled quietly to the ground. Then he saw something above. Luke Skywalker sitting with his legs crossed, eyes closed in concentration, and arms folded, floating to the ground. When the Jedi had floated within inches of the ground, he opened his eyes and jumped, as if dropping from a ledge. How did you do that?" Isolder asked. "I told you," Luke said. "The Force is my ally." "But you are dead. I saw it on my scopes." "A Jedi trance. It was necessary to fool Zinj's men." Luke gazed up into the night, and Isolder followed his line of sight. Far above he could make out the warships, tiny ships bursting into flames like distant stars gone nova. Part of him wondered how Astarta and his troops were faring in the battle, and he wished that he could be up there in the fighter protecting the ship. "You feel the pull, the call of the hunt," Luke said. "That's the dark side of the Force calling you." Isolder stepped back, fearing that Skywalker had somehow learned to read his mind, but Luke continued, "Tell me who you hunt." "Han Solo." "Are you sure?" "You have hunted other men before. What was the man's name? What was his crime?" "Haravan. He killed my brother." "You must forgive him. Your anger burns in you, a black spot on your heart. You must forgive him, and serve the light side of the Force." "What does it matter?" Isolder asked. "I'm not like you. I don't have any power. I will never learn how to float through the air or raise myself from the dead." "You have power," Luke answered. "You must learn to serve the light within you, no matter how dim it may seem." They set out, heading toward the distant mountains, along a tedious route that R2 could navigate, until they reached a desert that ran over the rolling hills. As the sun began to rise over the desert, casting an ethereal blue glow, they stopped to rest in the cool recesses of a crevice of rock. Nearly half an hour later, Isolder heard the earthquake. It started as a distant rumble, and the earth began to shake, and chunks of dirt broke from the sides of the crevice. Suddenly, a huge shadow flitted overhead, then another and another. Large reptiles with pale blue scales were leaping over the crevice. "Stampede!" Isolder threw his arms over his head. Hundreds of reptiles leapt over the crevice. The roaring quieted after several moments, and one huge reptile jumped into the crevice not a dozen feet from them, stood, panting, loose folds of light blue flesh jiggling at its throat as it studied them. The beast had blood-red eyes and black teeth shaped like spades. The scales at the top of its head were slightly iridescent, almost lavender. "Don't worry. We won't harm you," Luke said to the creature. He poured some water from his canteen into his hand and let the beast lap it up with its long black tongue. "What are you doing?" Isolder said. "That thing is drinking all our water." "It's 80 kilometers through the desert to the mountains, and there's no water between here and there. But every evening these creatures run to the hills to feed, and every morning they run back here to hide from predators in the day's sun. They call themselves the Blue Desert People. Tonight they will carry us to the mountains. We won't need all this water." That evening, just before the sun began to set, the beast raised its head, made a honking noise, and suddenly the Blue Desert People were everywhere, climbing out of their holes. When the sun had dropped below the mountains, they balanced themselves on the backs of the lizards. The Blue Desert People bellowed and raced across the sand on their powerful hind legs. By early nightfall they reached a wide, muddy river where tall grasses and reeds grew in the shallows. Birds with long necks and leather wings swooped low over the river in the moonlight, taking long drinks. Here the Blue Desert People stopped to water and feed among the rushes. "This is where we get off," Luke said, and they dismounted. At dawn, the morning fog blowing off the muddy river obscured Luke's vision so that he could not see more than a few meters ahead. The trees along the river had all burned and rotted so that limbs pointed up out of the fog like crooked fingers. Isolder said, "What's that?" Jutting above the fog in the river sat a huge metal platform leaning at an odd angle. Beyond the platform was an enormous exhaust nacelle, rotted through so that Luke could see parts of the heavy turbo generator still intact. "It looks like an old spaceship crashed here," Luke said. He started to turn to leave when the name on the rusted exhaust nacelle caught his eye. Chunthor. His mind did a little flip as he realized that it was not a race of people that Yoda had tried to free from the planet hundreds of years ago, but the spaceship. "We've got to get out there," Luke said. Isolder waited on the shore while Luke took R2 and poled out to the wreck on an ancient log raft that they found in the brush. This was no ordinary wreck. There were no blast marks to show signs of battle, no crumpled structure to indicate a violent landing. Rather, it seemed that the ship must have developed a technical problem and floated down peacefully. Luke looked in at one transparasteel window. Workbenches stood at the center, and several benches held rusted mechanical parts, corroded power cells, focusing crystals, handles for lightsabers, tools to make weapons that only a Jedi could use. Luke's heart pounded. A Jedi Academy, he realized, and everything suddenly made sense. I searched 40 planets and never found a sign of an academy, because the Jedi Academy was in the stars. Of course they needed a spaceborne academy. With so few people strong enough to master the Force, the ancient Jedi would have needed to scour the galaxy hunting for recruits. He pulled out his lightsaber, flipped it on, and began cutting through the transparasteel. Luke was so involved in using his lightsaber to try to break into the ship that he almost did not feel the power behind him, rushing toward him. He turned just in time to see a woman with long reddish-brown hair, dressed in tawny hides, coming at him. She kicked at him with a leather boot, and before he could respond, she swung a club, smashing his artificial right hand hard enough so that the circuit shorted and the lightsaber spun away. She kicked at his belly, and Luke dropped and rolled, using the Force to call his lightsaber back to his left hand. The girl stopped, and her mouth dropped in astonishment. "How can you work the magic, being only a man?" the girl said. "The Force is in us all, but only those who are trained can become its masters." The girl studied him skeptically. "You claim to master the magic?" "Yes," Luke said. "Then you are a male witch, a Jai, from beyond the stars?" Luke nodded. "I have heard of the Jai," the girl said. "Grandmother Rell says that they are unbeatable warriors, and since they battle for life, nature cherishes them, and they cannot die." The girl smiled at him and began chanting, and the look in her eyes shocked him. He had never seen such fierce lust. "Wait a minute. You can't be thinking—" Lightning crackled overhead, and a dozen small boulders blasted toward Luke, hurtling through the air. Luke swung wildly with his lightsaber, bursting several pieces of rock, but one caught him in the chest, throwing him backward. "Repulsed by the witches," Yoda had said. He hadn't even felt her move toward him, yet her club smacked his skull, and he reeled to the ground. Groggily, he realized that the girl was straddling his chest, locking his arms with her strong legs. She shouted triumphantly, "I am Tenennial Jo, a daughter of Alia, and you are my slave!"